So welcome everyone. My name is Megan McNeely and I'm the Senior Development Manager for ResearchHERS at the American Cancer Society. Thanks for joining us here for our third installment of Women in Leadership, a conversation in and out of the lab. I'm your moderator for our discussion this evening, and I'm joining from my home in Southern New Jersey. A few items before we get started. If you could please mute your audio now, we'd really appreciate it. Only our guests are going to be using the audio feature this evening. My colleague Desiree is going to be helping moderate the chat. So feel free to reach out if you need anything. For those not familiar, I always like to start with what ResearchHERS Women Fighting Cancer is. It's a movement for our community's most influential female leaders who want to drive progress in cancer research and are passionate about gender equality. Its goal is to support the growth and development of female researchers here in the greater Philadelphia region and across the country, and provide a platform to raise money and interest in women in science for current and future generations. I can't possibly move forward without acknowledging our ambassadors. So our research ambassadors who are with us tonight, thank you so much. Your fundraising efforts are more critical now than ever. And our corporate sponsor, Concierge. They know that high quality research that is relevant to a diverse society requires a research community comprised of people with different experiences and perspectives, and that includes women. Our topic tonight focuses on health equity through the cancer lens. Cancer impacts everyone, but it doesn't impact everyone equally. ACS and ACS CAN are working to ensure everyone has a fair and just opportunity to prevent, find, and treat cancer. We're honored to have two very special guests with us this evening to listen to, learn from, and continue the conversation with. Joining us live are Tamika Bryant, patient advocate and social media influencer, and Dr. Autumn Kieber-Emmons, Vice Chair of Research, Department of Family Medicine at Lehigh Valley Health Network. Thank you both so much for joining us in this really important conversation. To get us started, I'd like to ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself, how you chose to join us today, and just that little background bio. Tamika, will you start us off?
Absolutely. Hello, everyone, and welcome. And thank you once again for inviting me to participate in this totally rewarding conversation. My name is Tamika Bryant. As you stated, I am based in the Philadelphia area. I am a 8-year, almost 9, I'm counting those days down, triple negative breast cancer thriver. And as a result of my experience in the cancer space, I went on to become a patient advocate. I recognized that there were so many people who were not receiving the right level of care or getting the right information. And I wanted to make certain that there was never another woman who, one, felt alone, or two, felt like she could not get needed information. So that's what took me on my journey to become a patient advocate. I've done extensive trainings. I'm an advocate in science. I mean, you name it. I've probably done it. More recently, I've teamed up with some other Black cancer patient thrivers, advocates, and we've started something called the Black Women's Collaborative, where we are very instrumental in going into the communities and sharing needed information, making certain that people have what they need and all of that. And it's been extremely rewarding. So I'm happy to be here and to share lots of that information with you guys.
Thanks so much, Tamika. We're happy to have you. Autumn, same question for you. Please share a little bit about yourself.
Thank you so much as well for the invitation. I'm honored to be able to be here with Tamika and ACS to have this conversation this evening. So my name is Autumn Kieber-Emmons. I am a family physician, and I'm also a health policy researcher. I work at Lehigh Valley Health Network, which is in Allentown, and I've spent my career working specifically within Hispanic populations. So I speak Spanish. I have a clinical practice in a low resource sort of federally qualified health center with mostly Spanish speaking patients, and in particular have a research focus then on cancer and health disparities that impact the Hispanic community. And I want to say thanks to ACS. They have been actually one of the funders for my research work, and that's what we'll be focusing and talking about today, in particular with health equity. And that project is looking at cervical cancer mortality disparities and survivorship disparities in Hispanic women in the United States. So really excited to be here today and learn and share with you all.
Fantastic. So you guys both dug a little deep into why you chose this path, but is there anything else you wanted to share about why health and healthcare disparities matter to you, and what kind of drew you on your path to enter this work?
I can start. So as I stated, I am a breast cancer survivor, and I just didn't imagine that everyone was not getting the same level of care. It just seemed like a no-brainer to me. But as I was on my journey and participating in volunteer events, and I do a lot of things with my sorority, Zeta Phi Beta sorority, and I was finding that there were so many women and even men who had no idea of some of the things that I was talking about. Like I would come across a woman who maybe she had no idea what her diagnosis was. She just knew she had cancer. She knew she was getting chemo. She didn't know the type. And I realized that there was a lot of barriers that were happening and people weren't getting the right information. They weren't being presented with choices and things of that nature. So for me, it became so important to make certain that not another person felt alone or was going through this process kind of just on remote. You know, it's already bad enough when you hear those words, you're already kind of in a fog and you need someone there with you to kind of guide you. And oftentimes people don't have a maid or a caregiver that can come with them. So they look to their medical team to get that information. And when they don't get it, they don't really know what to do. And so for me, I wanted to make sure that no other person ever felt that way. So that's kind of what started me.
So just amazing. Autumn, what about you?
Yeah, so the motivation for me, somebody said the word justice or just already. And I think, you know, this idea that we should feel that we have the right to have equivalent sorts of treatments and care, and that every life matters. And, you know, if you get those terrible words that you have cancer, that the process for that should be something that you can access. And I've spent a lot of time in Latin America, where there's obviously differences that compared to the United States healthcare system. And I think one of the things that was really just shocking to me as I've gone through my medical school and then my clinical residency training and beyond is that we live in the United States of America and we still have these incredible inequities and disparities in terms of things that are as important as, you know, mortality outcomes from cancer diagnoses. And so I've spent time, as I mentioned, you know, getting a health policy degree to think about the big systemic sort of ways to impact that and research that can influence policy decisions that are being made to really get to the heart of what is at play with why these disparities continue to exist into the year 2021 in our country. So
I'm just passionate answers, and when you lead your life with passion, you really can't go wrong. So, you know, thank you both from the communities that benefit from your efforts. So we want tonight to be educational as well as conversational, and there's often this fear or caution around having discussions like tonight that I think is partly due to the misunderstanding of terms and the fear of misspeaking. Health disparities and health equity are often used interchangeably. Can you guys talk to me about how they're connected and how they're different? Autumn, you want to go first?
I can go. Oh, go Autumn. Yeah. No, that's fine. Go Autumn.
Yeah, so I mean, I think, you know, from a research perspective, health disparities are sort of the motivator, the research question, right? So the ACS funded me to look at health disparities related to a certain population, Hispanic women in the United States, and these figures that we see that in certain areas of the country, Hispanic women are dying from equivalent stages of invasive cervical cancer. So you see disparities, but then thinking about the bigger picture of health equity and what it means to have quality healthcare access to different populations, different groups across the country, and how to advocate and work for change. And you know, that doesn't necessarily mean that everything is going to be equal across different locales and different populations and different groups. And so really thinking about how we can use research to target what the differences need to be such that at the end outcome is less disparate. so that women of all ethnicities who may be having disparities that we see in the rates for mortality, for instance, in breast cancer or cervical cancer, end up having less, or hopefully the goal is no disparity in the end.
Mika, what are your thoughts?
So I like to read medical journals and research journals. I'm a biochemist by trade, so it's kind of still in me. And it's always alarming to me when I see the numbers. And then they say, oh, this is a health disparity, or they say it's health equity. And I recognize that oftentimes people want them to be the same thing, but unfortunately they are not. Health equity, anybody can experience literally a health equity, and I always say that the amount of money I have should not be dependent on the level of care that I will receive. And that's where we look at the health equities, and that, people who live, like I said, I live in Philadelphia. So people who live in, a lesser income bracket should not get a lesser level of care because their insurance is different from mine. And that's what I always speak to when I talk to people about health equity. I said, we're looking in a store and we all want a chocolate chip cookie. They shouldn't have to eat the chocolate chip cookie that has been bit off of or on the floor just because of where they live or, or their race or whatever. And then when we look at the disparities, it's so alarming because oftentimes it's not just about money. Most cases you see that people are experiencing these disparities simply because of the color of their skin. And in 2021, we've got to know that that is not okay. And ironically, today is the day of reflection. So we got to reflect back on what has happened in years past and say, you know what, we don't want this to be what we're known for as a country. We live in this country that should be able to provide the best medical care possible. We have some amazing doctors, amazing researchers who are trying to do what needs to be done. And the only way that we can get this done together and have everyone on the same playing field is when we acknowledge that these health equities and disparities exist and do something to stop them.
Oh, thank you both. And Tamika, you mentioned both numbers and reflection. So that leads me right into my next question for you. I'm going to read some numbers, and then I'd love to kind of hear your initial thoughts and reactions to them. So despite historically low incident rates, African-American women are 40% more likely to die of breast cancer than white women overall, and twice as likely to die if they're over 50. And Hispanic and Latino women have the highest rate of cervical cancer compared to other races and ethnicities, nearly 35% higher than non-white Hispanics. So when you hear those figures, what are your initial reactions and reflections?
I am disgusted. It's probably the best word that I can say without saying some words that will cause you to beat me. Like I said, we should not be in 2021 and these are the numbers. And a lot of it starts with us just looking at where we came from to where we are now. So we know that oftentimes, those numbers, especially in the African-American community, aren't just income driven. We have doctors who often don't take us serious enough. And then on the other hand, we have so many things happening in our lives because, we live that quote unquote superwoman myth that we don't make ourselves a priority. And then when we do, we're told, oh, it's just this, you'll be okay. And so we believe that we trust in the system and then the system lets us down. So until we recognize and really, really, really look at why these numbers are this way, the numbers are going to continue to rise. And that's the reason why I raise my voice every opportunity that I get.
Autumn, your thoughts? Yeah, thanks for your thoughts, Tamika. It's inspiring to listen to you. I think I want to share just a little bit about our cervical cancer research, which was motivated by these numbers, obviously, and just to give folks who are on the call a little bit of insight into how we are attempting to understand the disparity with the work that ACS has funded. So we use a technique where we utilize geospatial mapping to target areas of higher disparity, and then we do rapid qualitative analysis or work on site in those different locales to really get a very 360 sort of perspective on community factors, patient and family factors, medical systems, and then policy and regulatory environments that are different between different locales that have different disparity rates. And I have to say, I agree with the sentiment of disgust, because as a physician, we never on our team thought that we would see the disparities be impacted by differences in treatment. And I think that, we as a medical community feel that we've gotten past that, or we've moved along in the medical systems beyond that. And I think individuals, doctors, who very many of us try exceptionally hard to care for the patients in front of us, would be appalled to think that we would treat someone differently based on ethnicity or race. But in particular, with the study that was funded by ACS, looking at cervical cancer disparities by county level, we actually saw differences in access to standard of care for cervical cancer treatments, which is abysmal. And quite honestly, astonishing to our research team that was something that we found, and clearly is, impacting in that high disparity area, why women are dying twice as often from equivalent stages of cervical cancer. And so I agree with Tamika that until we do some of these multi-level sorts of investigation or research, or even sharing stories, not being quiet with our friends and families about the stories that we hear of those in our community who might be less powerful in terms of having their voices heard, we won't really understand what's the motivator behind the disparity.
So true. It really is. It's not a single bullet solution. You really have to do it from so many different angles to really get the conversation going. And that actually brings us, I should mention that some of the questions tonight were submitted by members of the audience, and that actually leads really well into the next one. They asked, whose responsibility is it to address inequities in health and society, and who's missing from the table?
I could jump in. I think, for the work that I do, the voice that's missing the most is the voice of oftentimes Spanish speaking voice of the Hispanic women and families who are impacted by this. And I think one of really the poignant qualitative pieces of our research, so we hear a lot with our qualitative work of obviously stories and interviews and focus groups. So getting a lot of data from talking with individuals. One of the things that was really poignant, that was sort of a highlight, was that this population is oftentimes overlooked or hidden, and their voice is silent because of language barriers, and also a lot of concerns, obviously, as well, in terms of immigration status and fear, and not wanting necessarily to speak out. So for the problem that I work on, we need to include the voice of those affected at the table. What was the first question you said? I wanted to make sure I answered.
Yeah. It was, whose responsibility is it to address?
Oh, right. So I would say, I wanted to mention this. I think that for women's health, and I know we're going to have a question in a little bit about this, I actually really feel like the responsibility lies with all women in some ways to make sure that we speak up for each other and speak about diseases or medical conditions that might be something that we typically would be more silent about. And so I know we'll get to some more of that, but really thinking about taking the power that we all have as women, as family members, as folks who have sisters and mothers and friends who are women, to share in the conversation with others about the importance of this.
Tamika, I'm sure you have some thoughts on who's missing.
Absolutely do. I think it's everyone's responsibility. As I stated, as a country, we are here with some of the most high-tech medical, everything you name it, you can think of, we pretty much have. We don't have a cure, but I feel like it's coming. I believe that. And until we take a look at, one, the people that it affects, and we treat them as individuals and not as Bobby's mom or Peter's cousin. We look at them individually so we can separate the biases and treat them as who they are. That's the first thing we have to do. We have to say, you know what? I am treating Mary, not because Mary is a Black woman, not because Mary is a white woman, she's Hispanic. I am treating Mary. Mary has this type of tumor, and this is what needs to happen for this type of tumor. We've got to get from attaching all the labels to it, because that's when everything gets so cloudy. And then that's when, we have these numbers and we see these unconscious biases coming to fruition. I spoke with someone and she explained to me that part of the reason why she didn't get the longer treatment was because her doctor assumed that she would have no way to get there because she was a single mother and her children had to get back and forth to school. Meanwhile, she's a single mother, but she's a VP of a company. Like, she can send people to take her kids to school, but he never took the time to understand what was happening with her. And that's what I mean when I say we've got to know the individual person. Are there women who will put off their care because of their home responsibilities? Absolutely. But then we need to make it convenient for them so that they can do what they need to do. We know that it is possible to treat so many of these cancers when caught early. The problem becomes when I complain about a pain, a lump, it's often just passed off. I'm looked at as though I'm complaining. We've got to get away from that. And when someone says something's going on, we need to listen and be objective about it. Ask the same questions you would ask your mother, your sister, your daughter, whomever, what is going on with them. And until we are really ready to have honest conversation about it and bring everyone to the table, we're going to continue to have these type of talks, and these numbers are going to rise. And as far as who's missing from the table, we already know the patients are the ones missing from the table. I'm grateful for organizations like ACS, where now you are requiring that a lot of times with these researchers that they have a patient advocate who is a minority, or that they are showing how they're reaching out to the minority community and planning to include the community, because we know years ago that was not the case. Hence the reason why some of the data and the numbers that they have for whether or not this works or that works is off, because when you look at who was included in the study, so many of the people that needed to be there were not there. So those are the people that are missing from the table, and we need to start asking more questions.
You guys have both given a little bit of the tidbit of my next kind of question.
Sorry.
But no, not at all. I mean, I think that's the point, right? We're having this conversation. But the next step of a conversation is really, how can we apply that health equity lens in our daily lives and decision makings? And how can we change from conversation and everyone's going to log off Zoom tonight, and what are the actions? What are like these actionable things that we can suggest people do moving forward to not click off tonight and be like, that was a great conversation, right? So what are these tips? What are action items? Give me some stuff to do.
You want me to go first? I think the first thing is we have to realize that science is compliant. So if you're not talking about it, that means you're in agreement with what's happening. And that's the first thing. Even if you can't log off here and really affect a change today, just from you talking about it will make someone stop in their tracks and think about it. So we've got to keep the conversation going long after we log off here. Maybe you say to a colleague, did you realize that the numbers were this? Did you realize that there are actually people in the world who go to the doctor and don't get the same level of care that you do, despite having maybe the same insurance, or maybe they don't? We got to keep the conversations going so that people will stop and think. And that is really, and also check them. If someone is saying something, be okay and be confident enough to say, that's not right. Because we all know that fake news exists, it's everywhere, and we have to be the ones to call out the truth.
Autumn, what would you like to add?
Yeah, I want to just reflect briefly a little bit about the trajectory of cervical cancer and remind folks that cervical cancer takes years to develop. There is a window of time that is really quite enormous from a clinical perspective, where you can make the difference for a woman that you know. So my first comment is the place and space of what you can do is really just be an advocate for women's health, and remind those that you love or those you come into contact with the importance of regular screening. Because if it takes 10 years to develop cervical cancer, every woman that died this year of invasive cervical cancer had something fall through the cracks over that very long time period. And so I think that cervical cancer in particular is kind of a unique disease in that respect, that we do have this time where you can be an advocate and encourage those around you to make sure that they're going in and doing that. From my policy lens, I just want to remind folks, obviously there's places and spaces to try to advocate for policy sorts of change. And some of them may seem useless or too easy or too hard. But I think, ACS is a great partner for that, thinking about how to reach out to legislators when there are certain opportunities to write as an individual, to sign on support for that work. If there's like a bill that's coming up for equal access for cancer or whatnot, ACS knows about those types of things. And if you stay abreast with them, they can help kind of link you into that. And then I just have to also mention our project that we've been doing, that I was talking about, that showed some county level differences. It sometimes seems like voting or not voting, it doesn't really matter, and it doesn't come back to healthcare in your mind the day that you go and vote, but it does. And in many places in this country, when decisions are being made at the healthcare level for public health systems, it actually comes back to elected officials. And so voting actually makes a difference for the real end outcome of healthcare in this country in a lot of places and spaces. So making sure you stay educated and know who sort of is on the ballot, and be aware of the ways that they might be influencing healthcare in your community.
I think that's a great reminder. I think that's voting and healthcare aren't always, thought of in the same kind of mind space. And so that's a great reminder for people as you kind of head to the polls, learning all that you can about the candidates and how that truly affects the communities you live in. So that's great. And Mika,
I have to agree. Yeah, I absolutely agree with her, because that is absolutely one of the things that I do all the time when it's voting season. I remind people, see what issues they support and make sure they're in line with you. It doesn't matter if they're Democrat, Republican, you want to make sure that they're in line with you. And at the end of the day, when you pull that ballot, you're comfortable in what you did. So yeah, that's a great reminder.
Fantastic. I love the action steps. I hope everyone was taking notes. So I'm going to talk about another data point for a second, and we kind of alluded to it, but women in the United States do make approximately 80% of the healthcare decisions for their families. So recognizing that we have the majority female audience, and hopefully a few brave male allies as well here tonight, can you talk to us about how trust enters that equation? How does trust, with whether it's the data-driven or the community relationship side, enter into this kind of conversation that we're having?
I took a big sigh, because I think there's just a lot of work to do, and especially within the Hispanic community and folks who speak only Spanish or prefer Spanish. Trust is just really kind of the aspect here that might be most elusive to get to. And I think as much as we can encourage, as researchers, obviously, developing trust and gaining trust by being partners that are there. I think ACS does a really great job of that with local sort of support and visibility, and staying and sticking through with communities for the long haul. But also as a researcher, I know myself and the team that I work with, we really have a high standard for that, to not just come and do a project and then walk away, and thinking about how research that is grown within communities actually is owned by the community rather than anyone else. So I think, that's just my own personal reflections on trust. And I think everybody here on this meeting probably has their own answer for that question. But collectively, I think trust is something that our society really needs to work on.
I could not agree more. I mean, trust is a huge impact on why the numbers are where they are, and why there are so many women who who won't go to the doctor because they just don't trust them. You know, we all know the historical facts, Tuskegee, Henrietta Lacks. We all know that it is there and it is always present. Every day someone mentions that. I am very big on encouraging people to do clinical trials. And I recognize that because I'm a science geek, that's where I come from. You know, I trust the science. I know it works. I'm living proof that it works. But, you know, when you're telling people, listen, you have to trust the science. You know, I'm not saying just be a guinea pig, ask questions, ask educated questions, talk to people, but don't just say no because of what we know has happened historically. And then the flip side of that is we have to acknowledge that it happened. Don't just try to sweep it under the rug. It happened, it is there, it existed, and it is always at the top of people's minds. Was it at the top of my mind? Absolutely. But like I said, I read all the information. I asked a million questions. And now when I sit with other patients or I go with them to appointments or we just chat, you know, over the phone, and now it's mostly Zoom, I encourage them. Clinical trials are a great way to just kind of get a handle on what's going on, you know, because when you're participating in these trials, they want you to be okay. So they're going to go above and beyond what your regular oncologist is going to do, because they need for this data to work. They need to know that they can get the funding and continue the funding. So they are going to be vested all in. Utilize that and know that you can trust these people. The other thing is we've got to make sure that we go into the community. So like, for instance, with your study that you're doing on Latinas, I'm certain that you're going into the community and you're talking to them. But we can't just go into the community because we need data. It has to be something that we do. We need to be inclusive always, no matter what's going on. Hey, we're doing a health fair. Come participate in the health fair. Hey, we're giving away water. Come get some water. Like, we want to make certain that they know that they are as an important part of the community as everyone is. And often that's what's left out. People just don't feel valued. And if I don't feel valued, then I don't want to be bothered. And that's what we have to start looking at.
Fantastic answers all around, and completely agree. So one of the relevant spaces we haven't talked about tonight is the pandemic. So for individuals who are battling cancer, you know, how has COVID-19 affected the disparities and, you know, widened the disparities in the end cases?
So we have to first just look at the beginning, you know, and a lot of these communities, they were the last people to get PPE. So you turn on the TV and everyone is saying, stay home, because you're seeing all the trucks, you know, all the people, the numbers are rising. So you're already nervous. But now I don't have PPE that works. I don't feel safe to not only go outside, to go to the hospital. For me, while the hospital might have been the safest place to be, but, you know, no one wants to take that chance. So I'm already lacking trust. You don't want to give me the equipment that I need to protect myself, and then you want to bring me to the hospital. So people are like, no, I'm not going in. I'm not getting routine exams. And, you know, in one study, they talked about how the number of breast cancer cases were down, not because people weren't getting it, but because people weren't getting mammograms, because they were afraid to show up at the hospital, not knowing, like, is something going to happen to me? Am I going to be a guinea pig? So the pandemic played a huge role in that. And that's where I think now we're really seeing just the disparities and the equity, because people are like, well, I knew that this person went and this happened to them, but at my hospital, this was doing it. And so until we can get on an equal playing field, we're going to keep seeing that this is going to happen, because people are literally afraid to go and visit their medical professionals right now.
Yeah, I totally agree. So I work in outpatient clinical practice, not so much in the hospital. And I think that I am exceptionally fearful. Even in my community, there's this concern to come to the doctor. For a long time, we actually, from an outpatient perspective, things were changed to video. You can't do a pap smear on a video. So women, you know, were falling out of their pattern for their screens. Once we open back up, folks in the community where I practice medicine have higher rates of COVID. So they're worried about coming into a clinical site where there might be other patients who are sick. And so I am really concerned that, you know, 2, 3, 4 years from now, because of the pandemic, in particular with cervical cancer, and the fact that a pass fail, really unfortunately is something that you have to do in person, that we're going to see the disparities even widen more. And so I know that our research team is starting to think about that problem, that conundrum, and what can we do from a medical and sort of policy perspective to try to mitigate some of that worsening.
And just on, a personal note, just sharing, it's really challenging because you do screenings, people miss a ton of screenings. I have someone in my life who had an abnormal pap smear in February of 2020. And there was this great fear of how and when to get them in the office to do a follow-up. And they didn't get in until June. And being, working at the American Cancer Society, it weighed on me. Every month I was like, can you get in yet? Why haven't you been able to find an appointment yet? And so, and she has good healthcare and a positive situation, so it's just, there's so many things that have continued to snowball with the pandemic. So I know we're getting close to the end of our time with you guys, but I did want to ask, are there any final thoughts you wanted to share with this group and really kind of what you want to leave tonight's conversation with?
I can go. Once again, I want to thank you guys for having this conversation. I hope this is not the end, and that, when we all leave here, we continue this conversation, be it with colleagues, friends, whomever, because it is very important. And like I said, the only way to affect change, it starts with us. And the more we are silent, the more compliant we are with it, and it will continue to happen. We know right now we're living in different times. I mean, people are, we have these restrictions being released, and, people are already going out without masks, and, there's some who aren't, and we have the conspiracy behind the vaccinations and all of that. I think it's going to be a while before we are back to what we consider normal. And I encourage you, anyone that you know, to make sure that they are not only practicing self-care, but taking care of themselves, going to the doctor, scheduling, going to the dentist, doing everything they need to do to make sure that their health is top of mind. Because we all know we get so busy with everything that we're doing, and oftentimes we become an afterthought. But because we can't afford to be an afterthought anymore, we're seeing that, for a lot of us, we lost almost a year of what we would have been doing, getting in to see our doctor, getting in to see our dentist, going to the chiropractor, just things that we know are important. And at least if they're only yearly, now you got to get back in the cycle. So just encourage your friends, your family, and really talk to them about what they're doing. And I would not be doing my due diligence if I did not remind them to do a monthly breast exam. Totally will save your life. Please do it. It's very simple, does not involve a lot. If you're uncertain, look online. There are plenty of videos where you can see how to get it done. And once again, just thank you.
Thanks, Tamika.
Yeah, thanks so much, Tamika. And similar sorts of things, making sure today, if you leave here with one thing that you heard from me, just being that advocate, being that voice to thinking about taking care of women's health needs for yourself and those around you. And I want to also really say thank you to ACS. As a researcher, there's funds out there, and the federal government and NIH is a funder. But ACS, in a way, is funding research that is very close to the ground and to the community because of the structure of the American Cancer Society and the partnerships on the ground and the folks that we work with, day to day in the different communities. And I think it's a very special sort of advocacy that you do through funding research in that way that makes it be something that hopefully can be very impactful and be a change in a way that some of the larger sort of federal kinds of monies are really kind of detached from that. So thank you to ACS and thanks for letting me join today.
Well, I'm so happy that I had time with both of you. And tonight's conversation has just confirmed that if we are to really reduce cancer disparities, we need to listen to the experiences and perspectives of people with cancer their caregivers, the community, and really engage everybody in the fight against cancer every step of the way. It's going to take all of us to make change happen and change the narrative, right? A more diverse research workforce, including gender diversity, is really critical to invigorating that problem solving and driving innovation, and ultimately better equipping us to address inequities that exist. So ResearchHERS is empowering women to do just that. We are determined to strengthen cancer research by making sure women remain a growing force in the field of cancer research. And we'd love for you to join us. There's information in our chat on how to become an ambassador or donate to the program. Before we sign off, I do want to just have one final announcement. We are going to be hosting a special edition of Women in Leadership, a conversation in and out of the lab on Wednesday, June 16th. So save your calendar now from 6 to 7. It is going to be featuring our incoming CEO, Dr. Karen Knutson, who happens to be our first female leader ever. So save the date, be on the lookout for more information in your inboxes. And thank you all for joining us today, and I hope you have a lovely evening. Enjoy each other.